The subway screeched to a halt, its metallic cry echoing through the underground tunnels of New York. It was late evening, the kind of time when most people were tired, rushing home, their faces buried in phones, headphones shutting out the world. But one man wasn't lost in his screen. His name was Ethan, a single father with worn-out sneakers, tired eyes, and a heart that carried both grief and hope. He had a little girl waiting at home, 4 years old, his entire universe. Every extra shift he took, every dollar he saved was for her. Life hadn't been kind to Ethan. His wife had died giving birth, and since then, he had learned how to fight life's battles alone. He wasn't rich, he wasn't powerful, but he was determined, and that was enough to keep him going. That night, the subway doors closed and Ethan noticed something unusual. A woman, well-dressed, with trembling hands, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. At first, he thought she was just another exhausted passenger. But then he saw her face twist with pain, her breaths coming in sharp gasps. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked, leaning forward, her eyes widened, fear pooling in them. I think the baby is coming." The words froze Ethan in place. His chest tightened as memories of his own wife's final moments came rushing back. The hospital, the panic, the helplessness. He shook the thought away. This wasn't the time. A woman needed help. A baby's life was on the line. The other passengers backed away, unsure, some too scared, others too indifferent. But Ethan stepped forward, steadying her shoulders. "Listen to me. I've been through this before. I can help." She gripped his arm so tightly it hurt, but he didn't flinch. Sweat trickled down her forehead, and her elegant clothes were already rumpled. She looked like she didn't belong on a subway. Too polished, too wealthy. But pain had a way of stripping away the masks, and in that moment she was just a mother fighting for her child. The subway kept moving, and there was no chance of getting off in time, no doctor, no nurse, just Ethan. He guided her onto the floor, using his jacket as a cushion. "Breathe. Focus on me. You're not alone." Her screams echoed through the car, startling passengers, but Ethan's voice remained calm. "Push when I say push. Breathe when I say breathe." Minutes felt like hours. His hands trembled, but his resolve didn't. He encouraged her, steadied her, held her through every wave of pain. And finally, after what felt like forever, the sharp cry of a newborn filled the subway car. The woman sobbed, clutching her baby to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Ethan's own eyes burned as he tied the cord with a shoelace and wrapped the child in his jacket. "You did it," he whispered, smiling through his exhaustion. "Your baby's safe." The train pulled into the station just as paramedics rushed in. The woman was quickly lifted onto a stretcher, still holding her newborn tightly. She turned her head, her gaze locking with Ethan's. "What's your name?" she whispered. "Ethan." She wanted to say more, but she was whisked away before the words could leave her lips. Days passed. Ethan went back to his routine. Work, rushing home to care for his daughter, scraping by paycheck to paycheck. He didn't think much about the woman. To him, she was just someone who needed help, and he did what anyone should. But fate wasn't finished with Ethan. 1 week later, he was called into his boss's office. Ethan braced himself. He thought he might be losing his job. Instead, his boss said, "The CEO wants to see you." Now, Ethan's heart raced. The CEO of the massive corporation that owned the company he worked for. He had never even been near the top floors of the building. Nervously, he entered the sleek office, where glass walls overlooked the city skyline. And there she was, the woman from the subway, dressed in power and elegance once more, but now with a softness in her eyes. She smiled, holding her baby in her arms. "Ethan," she said, her voice warm. "We meet again." He froze, realizing the truth. This wasn't just any woman. She was the wife of the CEO, one of the most powerful men in the city. And he had delivered her baby in a subway car. I didn't know," he stammered. "You didn't need to know," she replied gently. "You saved our lives. That's what matters." Ethan's throat tightened. He thought about how the world often dismissed men like him. Poor, struggling, overlooked. And yet in her eyes, he wasn't invisible. The CEO entered the room, then tall and commanding. Ethan straightened nervously. But instead of coldness, the CEO extended his hand. "My wife told me everything. I owe you more than words can say." Ethan shook his hand, overwhelmed. From that day forward, his life began to change. The CEO offered him a stable position, better pay, and security for his daughter. Not out of charity, but out of respect. He recognized Ethan's courage, his heart, his selflessness. Yet Ethan hesitated. He had faced enough struggles to know that handouts often came with strings. But when he looked at his little girl, when he thought of the nights he went hungry so she wouldn't, he realized this was a chance to build the life she deserved. And so, he accepted. But the journey wasn't without challenges. At work, some colleagues whispered that he had gotten his position only because of luck, or favoritism. Others doubted him, thinking a single father couldn't handle the pressure. Ethan worked twice as hard, proving himself again and again, while still rushing home to read bedtime stories and pack school lunches. His daughter often asked, "Daddy, why do you always look so tired?" He'd smile and say, "Because I'm working to give you a world where you don't have to be." There were nights when the weight of responsibility crushed him. Nights when he almost quit, but every time he remembered the baby he helped deliver, the look of gratitude in the CEO's wife's eyes, and his daughter's laughter. Those memories gave him strength. Slowly the whispers faded. People began to respect him, not for who he saved, but for who he was, a man who refused to give up. 2 years later, Ethan would look back at that night on the subway as the turning point of his life. Not because he helped someone powerful, but because it reminded him that kindness, courage, and compassion have the power to change destinies. The baby he delivered grew up healthy and strong, and though their lives were different, their families remained connected. Ethan's daughter thrived, proud of her father who had once been just another tired face on the subway, but had risen through grit and heart. And Ethan, he finally learned to forgive himself for not being able to save his wife. Helping another woman bring life into the world had healed a part of him that he thought would always remain broken.